2:46 p.m. Beneath the Pacific, a slab of Earth's crust the size of a small country snapped. A rupture so violent, it dragged a piece of the planet 60 meters in under a minute. The energy didn't stay underground. It tore outward, across the ocean, bending the seafloor, nudging the planet off its axis. A mega-earthquake had fired the first shot. The ocean answered, brutal, violent, setting the stage for something far worse. You'd think that was the end. No. Just miles away, at a nuclear station built to be untouchable, another disaster was forming. One that could have made Chernobyl, which poisoned half of Europe, look like child's play. No one saw it coming. Why would they? Ordinary afternoon. Trains running, kids in classrooms, offices winding down. But the planet had already shifted, and the world had quietly changed direction. True devastation hadn't reached Japan's shores yet. Plus, a nuclear threat, silent, unseen. Japan was about to face 3.11. Japan is no stranger to quakes. Quick tremors that rattle shelves, passing within seconds. People glance, shrug, continue their day. And this is why no one paid attention to the warning signs. March 9th, 2011, 11:45 a.m. A magnitude 7.2 quake hits off the Sanriku coast. 3 more follow that day, all above 6. But again, this was nothing unusual for Japan and its people. Life snaps back to normal in an instant. March 11th, 2:45 p.m. 2 days later, Japan's early warning system detects the first P waves. Over 1,000 seismometers light up. Emergency alerts fire. High-speed trains brake. Factories shut down. Kids duck under desks. The ground moves. 2:46 p.m. A magnitude 9.1 megathrust earthquake tears through the Pacific near the Oshika Peninsula. Kurihara City, closest to the epicenter, takes the hardest blow. Honshu shifts 2.4 meters east. The planet's axis tilts 10 to 25 centimeters. The energy released was enough to power Los Angeles for an entire year. The shaking reaches Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, even as far as China, Russia, and Taiwan. For a heartbeat, everything stops. Then chaos unfolds. Mothers grab children, cars skid on tilting streets, office workers sprint. Somewhere, a man clings to a street light as the asphalt ripples beneath him. Japan becomes a single trembling organism. For 6 brutal minutes, the Earth refuses to let go. This was only the beginning. Deep under the ocean, tension had been building for centuries. On that day, it snapped. Minutes after the shaking stopped, the ocean began to rise. Not naturally, not slowly, violently. A wall of water was forming and charging toward Japan's coast. 2:49 p.m. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued its first tsunami warning. Estimated wave height, 20 feet. But they were wrong. This wasn't a wave. This was a moving cliff. 3:21 p.m. The first major impact. A 26-foot surge slammed into Miyako in Iwate Prefecture, one of the closest coasts to the epicenter. They thought it was just the earthquake till they saw violent water sprinting at them. Instinct kicked in. People ran for high ground. The water climbed faster than anyone expected. Boats snapped from their moorings and launched inland. Houses lifted, twisted, and broke apart. Streets disappeared under black water. Entire neighborhoods vanished in seconds. Town after town along the Pacific coast fell the same way, from Aomori down to Chiba. TV cameras captured the nightmare. Shipping containers rolling like stones, entire buildings folding under the pressure. 3:25 p.m. The surge pushed deeper inland, tearing through city after city until 420 miles of coastline lay in ruins. 30 minutes later, the water finally began to retreat. and the pullback was almost as deadly as the first hit. Cars, debris, entire homes were dragged back into the ocean. People who escaped the initial wave swept away on the return. They thought they had seen the worst, but it had just started.
I
kept saying in my head, please stop now, please.
I ran outside but was unable to stay standing up because the ground was shaking so much. I got down on my hands and knees and waited for it to pass.
Beneath the floodwaters, another crisis had already begun. While Japan was still reeling from the effect of an earthquake and a tsunami, a deadlier emergency was igniting at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, Japan's Pacific coast, about 100 kilometers south of Sendai. A quiet facility had become a ticking time bomb. Fukushima Daiichi housed 6 boiling water reactors built between 1971 and 1979. On March 11th, reactors 1 through 3 were active. Reactor 4 held spent fuel rods. When the earthquake hit, the systems responded exactly as designed. Reactors shut down. Backup generators kicked in. Cooling pumps ran. For a moment, things looked under control. Then the tsunami. A 15-meter surge rolled over the seawall, flooded the basements, and drowned the generators. Power died. Cooling stopped. What had already taken cities now severed a nuclear reactor's last line of defense. Heat spiked inside the reactors. Fuel rods overheated. Cores started to melt, fast, violently, and far outside anything the manuals prepared for. Then came the hydrogen explosions. March 12th, Reactor 1. March 14th, Reactor 3. March 15th, Reactor 2 ruptured. This particular one ignited a fire in Reactor 4's spent fuel pool. Radiation straight into the air. Evacuations expanded again and again. 1.9 miles, 6 miles, then a 20-kilometer. A 12-mile exclusion zone, nearly 600 square kilometers emptied. Fields, homes, streets, all contaminated. Food, water, air. Districts turned into ghost zones overnight. Luckily, there was a saving grace. Inside the plant, a small group stayed. A group of men famously known as the Fukushima 50. Engineers, technicians, and operators. They worked for weeks, battling against physics, time, and the limits of the human body. Without them, Fukushima would have become something far worse. A catastrophe capable of reshaping Japan and the world. A natural disaster had triggered a man-made apocalypse, and the men inside fought to keep it from becoming the final blow. In the first hours after the earthquake, an emergency command center was established in Tokyo. Rescue workers poured in, and some 100,000 members of the self-defense force were mobilized immediately. Allies answered. U.S. military personnel deployed straight into the disaster zone. Teams from Australia, China, India, New Zealand, South Korea, and dozens of other countries arrived, along with the Red Cross, Red Crescent, and NGOs from around the world. Relief poured in, financial, material, manpower. Some survivors were pulled from rubble in the first days. But for most, there was only one relentless task: recovering bodies. Hundreds washed ashore after being carried out to sea, evidence of the staggering scale of human loss. What caused all this? Deep beneath the Pacific, two giants grind against each other. the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. For centuries, the Pacific Plate has pushed westward, millimeter by millimeter, forcing itself beneath Japan at the Japan Trench. A subduction zone built for violence. Pressure doesn't vanish. It waits. Then, on March 11th, it snapped. Not quietly, not slowly. Shallow, sharp, catastrophic. At roughly 25 kilometers deep, the rupture sent shockwaves through the crust with precision. It lunged 50 to 60 meters of sudden displacement. A slab of earth roughly 400 kilometers long and 150 kilometers wide surged forward in seconds, heaving toward the Japan Trench. The signs had been there. 2 days earlier, a magnitude 7.4 foreshock shook the region, just 40 kilometers from the main rupture. 3 more quakes above magnitude 6 rattled the area in hours. Pressure was shifting, the system destabilizing, the planet clearing its throat. Nobody knew what was coming. This zone has a brutal history. Since 1973, 9 quakes over magnitude 7 struck this trench. But the danger goes deeper. Offshore quakes in 1611, 1896, and 1933 launched massive tsunamis into the Sanriku coast, a jagged coastline carved into deep, narrow bays. Bays that only aggravate waves. In 1896, a 7.6 quake sent 38-meter waves, killing 27,000. In 1933, an 8.6 quake produced 29-meter waves, taking more than 3,000 lives. This part of Japan lives with the ocean's wrath, and the ground beneath has a long memory. But March 11th, 2011, was on another level. It wasn't just bigger. It was beyond anything the southern Japan Trench had produced, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded, and the 4th most powerful in the world since modern seismography began in 1900. It became one of the deadliest, too. Initial reports counted hundreds dead, hundreds more missing. As the devastation became clear, especially along the coastlines, the numbers climbed fast. Within 2 weeks, the official toll had passed 10,000. Another 15,000 were still missing, presumed dead. As the search pressed on, confirmed dead and missing reached about 28,500. Some of the missing were later found alive, bringing the final tally by the end of 2011 to roughly 19,300. In many communities, half the population simply vanished. Ships were swept into the sea. Trains derailed. Some passengers survived, but the rare rescues didn't erase the scale of loss. Most fatalities were in Iwate, Miyagi, and Fukushima. Miyagi suffered the heaviest losses, 10,800 killed or missing, and 4,100 injured. Drowning was the grim common denominator. More than half of the victims were 65 or older. The tsunami didn't discriminate. It simply erased, leaving behind numbers, debris, and a nation forced to reckon with its vulnerability. The earthquake itself left scars far beyond the water. Fires broke out across cities, thousands of homes shattered, some reduced to rubble, others flattened by aftershocks. Infrastructure didn't survive either. Roads, rail lines, power, and water, all destroyed. In Fukushima, a dam burst, sending more water into an already chaotic region. The nuclear disaster added another layer of cost. The meltdown at Fukushima became the world's costliest nuclear accident. Over $235 billion in damages bring the total value of the disaster to over $360 billion. Casualties: 19,759 deaths, 6,242 injured, 2,553 people missing. Japan carved out a 10-year window for the comeback. The first 5 years became the intensive reconstruction period, a full-force push backed by 25 trillion yen. The next 5 years, the reconstruction and revitalization period, were powered by another 6.5 trillion yen. Infrastructure, rebuilt, homes, back online one after another until most were complete. Evacuees, from more than 470,000 displaced down to about 30,000. The Reconstruction Agency didn't stop at concrete and steel. They pushed to revive industries, stabilize livelihoods, and keep people mentally and physically upright. This wasn't charity. This was a country tightening its fists and pulling itself out of the wreckage, brick by brick. Compared to Miyagi and Iwate, Fukushima's comeback was slower. Radiation fades on its own time, but as its levels dropped, partly naturally, partly through decontamination, entire districts that once stood silent started opening again. Evacuation orders were lifted in key areas, allowing people to finally step back into the places they had been forced to abandon. Life returned, little by little. Japan enforced food safety checks with some of the strictest reference values on the planet. Nothing hits shelves, domestic or international, unless it clears those inspections. The same discipline applied to the sea. Marine products from Fukushima that make it into the market contain 0 radioactive materials above allowed limits. No exceptions, no blurred lines. Only what passes the threshold moves. The trust in its own systems had cracked. But Japan rebuilt with numbers, procedures, and a system that left no room for uncertainty. The country restructured its energy policies and forced the world to rethink nuclear safety. Nations thousands of miles away revised protocols. The comeback was smooth. Systems rebuilt, cities returned. But the people who lived through that day carry memories no reconstruction plan can erase.